Greetings all, this is episode 31 of Hear Her Sports. I'm your host and producer, Elizabeth Emery. Today's guest, Katie Jackson, and I met completely by chance at Havana, a Cuban restaurant in West Palm, Florida. She was there competing, and I said hello because she was wearing her Team USA jacket. I'm so glad I did. Katie is an amazing, warm, dynamic person. We talk about her determination very early on in her diagnosis to compete in the Olympics, balancing training and other parts of her life, and lots of details about riding as an above-knee amputee. Katie is a ParaEquestrian Dressage Grade 5 competitor. She began competing at the highest level only a year ago in January 2017. In each of the 4 international events held last year in the U.S., she finished in the top position for her grade. She also earned 4 gold medals, representing Team USA in the Nations Cup portion of these same competitions. With her horse, the photogenic Royal Dancer, she is number 3 on the International Equitation Federation World Ranking list for Grade 5 para-equestrians. Outside the barn, she gives back to her amputee and cancer-fighting communities and co-founded the Austin Sarcoma Support Group. Mostly, though, Katie is laser-focused on representing the U.S. and medaling at the ParaOlympics in Tokyo. Just a small note, in the episode, I read a quote without a source. It's from a post on Equine Exchange. Find a link to that on episode notes at hearhersports.com. Also find there links to Havana, the restaurant, along with other things we discuss. Well, let's get started. She and I start our conversation with a bit of reminiscing.
That was so fun, actually. I forget sometimes, especially when I've gone straight from a horse show out into, to get to the restaurant or something, when I have some of my USA gear on too, that I will get stopped from time to time and people ask me what I'm doing and that. So not at all. That was so fun. And I love how sometimes paths connect in the funniest places.
I know. It's
that
great.
Place, Havana, is so good. I love that restaurant.
Yeah.
It's probably a good thing I don't live in Florida because I would eat there way too much.
So you've been there before?
I have, yeah. So this was the first time that I'd gotten to stay in Florida for an extended period of time, but I had traveled there twice last year for horse shows, so once in January and once in March, and we were there usually a little over a week for those. And then the first time was 2 years ago when I kind of came out on a fact-finding mission to learn more about ParaEquestrian Dressage and just see what the sport was all about. So it's been, a quick whirlwind to think that was literally 2 years ago. And now here I am, kind of looking towards the World Equestrian Games and towards Tokyo in 2020. So it's been quite an adventure.
Yeah, I wanted to start with that question because I kept on having to reread your bio that only 2 years ago you had your surgery and found out about having cancer. Can you sort of talk about the timeline and what seems like a very speedy recovery and rise to the top of your sport?
Yeah. So I probably had started having symptoms about a year and a half before we found out what was going on. Just some pain behind my knee. I actually lost a lot of the flexibility in my right knee, but I'd been a runner, nothing crazy like marathons, but I would, run a few miles up to maybe 5-10 just for exercise. And as it started going on, it was just explained to me that I was getting a little older and, it was probably a cyst back there and to give it some rest. And as rest turned into more and more months and me starting to limp, I decided it was probably time for a second opinion. And that second opinion was June 30th of 2015. I went actually that same day for an MRI that kind of was inconclusive as far as what it was. We knew it wasn't a cyst at that point. So I made an appointment with, we have a surgical oncologist who's thankfully a sarcoma specialist right here in Austin. And kind of those appointments turned into July 15th, getting my diagnosis of what's called a clear cell sarcoma. It's in the same family as the more commonly known bone cancer called osteosarcoma, but this one is actually of the soft tissues that was growing behind my right knee. And then on August 5th of 2015 was when I had my surgery, which was an amputation of the right leg above my knee.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff happening really
It
quickly.
was it was a whirlwind. It was definitely, those moments that you don't feel like you hear about other people having to go through things like that, but to actually live them it's incredible. I don't wish it upon anyone, but at the same time, I've been really fortunate in that some really amazing things have come from it as well. And one of them being my riding. I grew up as a kiddo with horses and ponies and actually doing some dressage. So horses have kind of always been a part of my life, but never to the level that they are now. So I knew I wanted to get back on. I knew that there was something called ParaEquestrian Dressage. I knew that it was actually a Paralympic sport, but I really didn't know much other than that. And for some reason, as I was going through all of this, that's what my mind just kind of clung on to as a coping mechanism of, okay, I'm going to ride again. And if I have to lose my leg and deal with all of this cancer stuff, I'm gonna see what I can do with my riding career and maybe make a bid for the Olympics. So that was a simple statement to say back then. And here I am now learning so much more about it. So that was, that was January of 2016 that I went out and watched one of the 3-star competitions in Florida and got to meet some of the riders that were currently on the team and some of the coaches. And they encouraged me to come back 2 weeks later to do what's called a classification. So in order to ride as a paraequestrian, you have to be evaluated to see which of the 5 grades that your disability will fit into. So I did that 2 weeks later, and from there started back riding and actually competing in 2016 on the national level, and then made my international debut a year ago in January down here in Florida.
Wow, just a year ago. How about that?
Yeah. So I've been back riding for 2 years, and riding at the 3-star level now for a year. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So, I mean, what gave you the idea that you wanted to, bid for the Olympics? And I mean, what was the motivation or the interest or determination? I mean, I don't even know what the word would be for what it was that gave you that impetus to dive so deeply into this new sport.
I think at that point your life is literally kind of the path that you were on just got, the box got turned upside down and shook around, and you're kind of trying to grasp for something that is a part of your life that is a known. And I honestly I don't know exactly where it came from. I mean, we were really struggling, as we knew it was some type of tumor, but didn't have the diagnosis of what kind yet. I'm a planner, and I work off of, okay, here's the best case scenario, and I ask, what's the worst case scenario? And he said, it would be amputation of the leg, it would be full-blown chemo, and kind of just battling for your life at that point. And at the same time, in getting the diagnosis, he did say essentially it was your leg or your life, and it makes it a little bit easier to have to swallow something like that. Okay, in that perspective, I'm pretty glad that it is something that we can get rid of, and it's in a spot that could be that we could actually remove it. And then from there, I don't know. I mean, the horses have been my happy place. They're the place, they're where I go after work to decompress and to, get back into a good spot. And they've always just kind of been therapy for me. So I guess, something in my mind knew that's what I needed at that point, and said, okay, well, we're going to make horses an even bigger part of your life.
And did your friends and family just look at you like, oh, brother?
I think we were all just processing, and there were such big things going on that I'm sure there's plenty of things that I said at that point that I have no recollection of now, but that's the one that stuck. And I actually owned two horses at that time, one that was a retiree and one that was quite young. And so, I was back out at the barn visiting them and feeding them carrots just a couple weeks after surgery, and itching to get back on. So I think that's the part that stuck, that was, my motivation to get clearance to go to the barn, and my motivation to do my rehab so that I'd get cleared to sit on the horses, and all of that just kind of kept me trucking through.
Yeah. I hadn't realized that you had two horses at the time. So how involved were you in riding prior to finding out about cancer?
So horses were more of a hobby. I'd put kind of family and career first. I did ride dressage as a kiddo, and then I came back as an adult amateur and had competed through the national level, third level with him, but more a show here and there as I could fit it in. I did usually after work go out to the barn and ride. I actually had been out of the show ring for about 5 years at the time of my diagnosis, just because my now retiree had quite a few injuries that we had tried to overcome and rehab, and then he would get hurt again. And so I did have a bit of experience with riding and dressage, which I think helped me with getting back to the sport and also helped me get back into the show arena at the level that I compete at a little bit easier, because I had ridden those movements before. I knew what they should feel like. I never imagined getting to ride the quality of horses that I'm riding now and at this level of competition. But I did, I had that background, and so I think that has helped me.
You touched on a topic that I find very interesting because I do ride, but I've never had my own horse,
Oh,
and I've
wow.
certainly never ridden a super high quality horse. And I was riding, and I thought, what would it be like to ride a really fancy pants horse? So how does it differ from sort of just your average horse?
Oh my gosh, they're amazing. I mean, something that I've gotten to experience. And I've always had a connection with the horse, and when you're riding them, one of the things I love most about dressage is just you're in this constant communication with them, and they don't use words, but they're giving you feedback, and you're, with your balance and with your seat, you're telling them where you want to go. And I've always thought that was just pretty amazing that they can be, they literally, sometimes I feel like they're reading your mind. Just that connection increases so much. And these horses, they truly love what they do, and they are trying every second, every minute. They're connected with you, and they want to do good. They want to work for you. And so that part of it has been pretty incredible to see. On the other side, just the athleticism and the power. I mean, you are covering so much ground in the canter and in an extended canter, and it's just amazing to feel that much power that's contained underneath you, and literally is just waiting for you to tell them. I can have him slow down by literally just taking a breath in and exhaling, and
Wow,
that tells
yeah.
him to slow down. Or if I open my hand just a little bit with the rein, that tells him to go faster. It's pretty incredible, but I think it's the power that impresses me the most, that they're just so strong.
Wow, that's fun. Are they smarter than the average horse, or is it more training, do you think?
It's probably a little bit of both. I've had some pretty darn smart horses in the past and mischievous. I mean, they could figure out how to open their gates and come out, and I've taught them tricks and that. But I don't know. I mean, they definitely have to have a pretty high IQ or horse IQ to learn some of the things that we teach them, and to have that understanding. They're pretty incredible animals, really.
Well, I'll have to agree with you on that. So explain some of the details about riding as an amputee. And for example, I see you have a special saddle.
I do. I've done some modifications. It's actually regular dressage saddle that what I ride with is a Velcro release strap across my hip on the right side. I call it my seat belt because it is kind of that, and that, for the most part, it's pretty passive on that side. If the horse were to stumble or to spook, it just gives me a little bit of an opportunity to have something to catch myself on that side with, so that I don't just end up being launched through the air. And it does help too. One of the biggest differences is the weight. On the left side, I have everything from my, lower thigh, my knee, all of that, which is almost 10 pounds that was taken away. And so the right side just kind of floats up. So balance has been the biggest change for me, and just the biggest thing that I still work with, and being even in my balance. That strap does kind of help me just get a little bit of security on that side, because it literally just kind of wants to float up, especially in the bigger trot movements and that. Something that we have actually worked on as well is a posterior thigh block. So something that goes behind the stump or the residual limb on the right side, just to give it a little more stability. When I first started riding that area, you get a lot of atrophy, and you've really just kind of babied it to make sure that the incision is healing, and as all the nerves are reconnecting in that, it's pretty sensitive. So it doesn't do a whole lot in the first few months. So literally when I first got on and would try and canter, it would just roll back and forth uncontrollably, kind of do its own little dance on that side. So it's gotten much stronger, and I actually influence the horse with it now. I can squeeze the adductor muscles on that side. And so if I need to, I can kind of tap or squeeze to get some of the sideways movements with the stump, which is pretty incredible. But balance is definitely the thing that I still, work with at all times, and has been, kind of the biggest hurdle to overcome as an amputee, I think, rider is keeping yourself upright and keeping yourself balanced on the horse.
Yeah, let's jump right into some of the training that you're doing. I imagine core strength is super important, and you mentioned balance.
Yeah. I worked a lot with a physical therapist through learning to walk again. And then she was actually wonderful as I was starting to ride again, and that we adapted a lot of the physical therapy sessions to things that would help me strengthen my body for riding. So you're absolutely right. There's lots and lots of core. We would get on a big barrel, and she would have me do things where I was essentially sitting on a barrel like it was the horse. And even at one point, we put one of those weight sensor cushions under my seat bones, what you would use for somebody who's sitting in a wheelchair all the time, to make sure that they're not going to get pressure sores. And she would have me do different movements in that, and then kind of come back to stable or envision myself in the different movements of a dressage pattern, like a shoulder in or a half pass or this and that. And then I'd have the screen giving me feedback on where my weight actually was. So it was really, really helpful.
Wow, she sounds like a really good PT.
She was amazing. It was Carrie Callis at St. David's Medical Center here in Austin, and she's an incredible lady on so many levels. But yeah, it was fun for her. I think I'm the first equestrian she's worked with. She's worked with lots of amputees, but she was game to watch videos and see what was going on and see how she could help. So that was really cool. And I've actually recently started doing some Pilates work with a private instructor, and I feel like that has made a big difference as well in just overall core strength, flexibility, and just awareness too of my body and what I'm doing. So for me, actually a little more fun way to get that core workout in, instead of just sitting there and doing planks and crunches and whatever else it is to get everything strong. So
yeah. So what about other strength training and maybe aerobic exercise that you're doing?
The thing that I've found, it's hard for me at this point. Some of the aerobic exercises, walking gets my lower back really, really tight. And then the leg that I'm on, I'm not able to run with it. There are running legs. But what I've found is I do a lot on a rowing machine. And that helps me build strength and work on my cardio at the same time. And that's been a huge thing too, because that is another element of it. You can be really strong, but if you don't have that endurance from from that side of things as well. So I'll usually do strength training and some time on the Concept 2 to really kind of help with getting my cardio back.
Yeah, what are the key elements for being successful at your sport? Like how important is endurance and how important is strength?
It's a balance of both. It's a lot like ballet in that you have someone, horse and rider, where you have a level of strength that's there, but it also has to have flexibility. There has to be tone without rigidity. And so it is important to be strong, but you can't, if you're just focusing on strength, you may lose a lot of flexibility and then you're not having the movement that you need to move with the horse and give the signals. And at the same time, your heart rate goes up a lot. And when you're riding these big horses and in these events, I'll end up coming out of practicing a test and I'm breathing really hard. So, you have to be in decent shape to do this and compete at this level, and just, everything that's involved with, I like to be involved with as much as I can on getting the horse ready to go and taking care of him. At the bigger competitions, I'll have a groom, but on a day-to-day basis, I want to be the one getting him ready or giving him his bath and doing all of those things. So I think the better in shape I am, the better I can perform. And as an amputee, something that I didn't realize right away, but I still struggle with, is we burn a lot more energy just getting from point A to point B, even if you're not going very quickly. I've heard
Really?
it's about as an above knee amputee, I think 150% of the energy consumption, just literally to, walk across the room. So
Wow.
I have to be really careful. And there's times I'm like, I don't feel like I've done a lot today, but I'm exhausted. And it's because I've been walking all around or loading things and unloading things and that. So it definitely, I would say I'm still kind of a work in progress of getting to know my new body and what it needs. And also for me, from the cancer side of it too, just listening a little more and the way that I would have trained in the past, I'm not able to maintain that. I'll get extremely exhausted and I just don't recover the same way. So it's been a learning process for me. I did CrossFit before and would do a lot of, heavy weights and this and that, and I can still do them, but I find, a week or 2 weeks into that I just have kind of burned out all of my energy reserves instead of building them back up. And so it's been a little bit of a trial and error for me to find what I can do to increase my fitness, but also keep my energy levels sustained.
I would expect that your body is still adjusting. Really, it's only been a short time. So are you
Yeah,
expecting that you're gonna, see changes for another, I don't know, 2, 3 years? Sort of in
you
your
know,
ability to adjust and what your
yeah.
workload.
I think I would think so too. I have to remind myself of that at times, that it really hasn't been that long. Probably in the last 6 to 9 months, I have noticed that just overall, I am feeling better and I am able to take on more and have longer days and do more. So I would think that some of that is going to just continue to improve. And the more that I can kind of listen to my body too and be in tune with when it's just a time to have a rest day, or whether this is a good day to push. And some of that, I've not always been the best at that. I kind of burn the candle at both ends and just push forward. And if you're a little sleepy, that's what they made coffee for. So I'm learning. I'm learning. Yeah, that's, if there's a minute in the day, I will fill it.
Yeah.
So taking care of myself has probably been one of the biggest challenges of this, and just kind of learning what I need to do that. But yeah, hopefully as I continue and things, this kind of new normal really establishes, I would think that I'll get into a little more of a groove.
Right. So I want to talk about what kind of training you're doing on the horse, but first I want to find out about your horse.
Yeah. So my horse's name is Royal Dancer, and he is a 13-year-old Westphalian gelding who has had quite a career so far. He was ridden by my coach's daughter for quite some time in what we call able body dressage, and she competed with him and did quite a bit, and had some success, even some Horse of the Years and some big awards. And then he actually started his paradressage career with another rider at our barn, Roxanne Trunnell, and ended up going to Rio with her as her mount for the ParaOlympics in 2016. I know. And then I was lucky enough to start riding him the following spring, after the horse I was riding had sustained an injury. And so I was really lucky to get to ride him, and we connected, I felt like really, really quickly, had just an instant connection. And so I've been riding him actually since March of last year, and then was able to purchase him this fall. So I get to be his mama now, which is really, really exciting.
That's great.
He's just a super, super sweet guy. He's always, ready to work and ready to just try his heart out for you, which is really amazing. I mean, when I talk about horses that can read your mind, it's almost spooky sometimes where he'll do things and I'm like, how did you know that's what I wanted? Because I don't think I gave that aid yet, but I guess I did shift a little bit. So he's just a goof. He loves giving kisses. He's always in your pocket trying to find a treat. And I also found out that he's a huge ham too. He loves attention. I had the prosthetics company, Austin Prosthetic Center here in Austin, came up to the barn to meet him and do a testimonial for my prosthesis there. And I wasn't sure how he'd respond to having cameras around and all the people. He loved it, absolutely loved it. I just couldn't stop laughing at him. He just was being such a goof and just absolutely soaked up all the attention. So
That's really funny.
He's pretty funny.
So I saw a quote somewhere, I don't remember where it was, but it's initially the horse can feel confused and frustrated by the asymmetry of her body, so it's important for Katie to find horses with the patience and willingness to figure it out without getting stressed. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that a little bit? And maybe also, what changes have you made in the training and the cues that you give?
Yeah. So it is really true. And it's just like, you'll kind of get to know a horse's temperament as they're learning from when they're a baby up. And some horses, as you face them with a new challenge or something more demanding, go into it with like, okay, I don't really understand, but I'm going to work with you. We'll figure this out. And other ones have to go through a little more of a process of what's going on. And aren't as initially wanting to work with you. The biggest thing I think when I first try a horse or when I first get on is what I call is kind of establishing a new neutral. So horses are used to you're sitting on them and you have your seat bones balanced on either side of the saddle, and then you have your legs just kind of lightly draped on either side. So they're not putting pressure on, but they're touching the horse so that they know that there's a leg there. A lot of times you'll hear trainers say it's like a wet towel, just kind of draped in that area. But for me, I have that wet towel draped on the left side and nothing on the right. And, the more trained horses for them, that would be essentially a cue to move sideways or to move over to the right side, because they
Oh, of
have
course.
a zero on one side and a slight pressure on the other. So, for them, it's just kind of evening that out and teaching them, okay, this is what you're going to need to feel, and you're going to kind of have to establish that this is our ground zero for just moving in a straight line. And then if I do want you to move sideways or move, your hunches to the inside or that, I'm going to put more pressure on the one side. And then I'm allowed to carry a whip at any time while riding or in competition, and getting the horses just to know that it's not a punishment. For me, it's just an aid. It's the extension of my leg that's not there. So I will use it with just even resting it on their side, and I'll use that at first to just tell them, no, go in a straight line, or as I'm starting to get them to learn about moving off, what would be my right leg, I'll use the whip, and again, just kind of a little light tap in the spot where my leg would normally be. And for most horses, it's something that, again, they're a little bit confused about. And a lot of times I'll start off, and I've had some that literally the first time I ride them, I just walk. And that's all we do is kind of work on moving side to side or forward and back and all those things without the leg. Occasionally there's a horse that it's a little too much for them. It is a new language, and they want their old language, and they're just not sure how to handle that. And whether it's an experience that they had in the past, and maybe they're a horse that just really is uncomfortable with having or carrying a whip, or they're just too sensitive. I've had a couple where you could just tell that I'm sure they would have figured it out, but it just stressed them too much, which is just not, it's not the relationship you want, and it's not the environment you want for the horse too. You want them happy and willing to work. And if it's just not going to be a healthy, happy situation for them, then riding with me on is maybe not the best thing for them. For me too, with the help of my coach, there were times that if there was something I was really struggling with, he could get on the horse, and even though there's the leg there, he wouldn't use it. And so he would essentially use all of the cues that I would be using, and then to just kind of go through the language gap, would occasionally use his leg and say, no, this is what we're wanting, and then reinforce it with the whip or with the aids to just help the horse kind of learn that new language a little bit. So it's definitely important to have good people and good experience around you to help with that. And I think every rider is a little different in their needs, and so it's kind of a fun challenge as well of thinking outside the box of what can we do to help this horse learn, and learn this new language. Because for the most part, a lot of our para horses have had a career in dressage prior to coming into the para-equestrian world.
Right.
Some of that, has to do with safety as well, that we want them to have the experience in the show ring and the experience in different environments. We compete in Florida in the big international stadium, and that's a pretty electric environment for a lot of horses. So it's important to have a horse that is able to cope with different environments and cope with that added stress as well.
So are all the cues that your leg that's not there would be doing is now the whip, or are there other alterations that you've made?
I find that I don't, once I've gotten to know the horse, and for instance, for Royal Dancer and I don't actually use my whip that much anymore. And I'm really influencing him off my seat, and off of just the distribution of my weight and my position in the saddle, and enforcing it sometimes if I need a little more expression, or if he's maybe just being a little lazy that day, I'll give him a tap. But he's really learned to do the movements and respond to my seat, and even like I was mentioning, to the little bit of my leg that is there. So I really, for him and for some of the other horses that I've gotten to ride long enough and have that relationship, I really don't use the whip as anything more than kind of a refining aid at that point, almost the way they would say you'd use a spur. It's only there if you need a little more expression or if you need just a little bit of, a little bit more for what you're doing.
Right.
Which is pretty neat.
Yeah, that's cool. So what are your weeks like? And in that answer, like how often are you getting on the horse and training on the horse?
That's a great question. And it's been a little different lately. Over the past 2 years, I've actually trained out of North Texas Equestrian Center up in Dallas. And I live in Austin. So it's about 200 miles door to door from where I live to where Royal lives. So I'm lucky enough to kind of find a balance between the two parts of my life. I was in my office Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday mornings. And then I would drive Wednesday afternoon up so that I could ride Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and occasionally a Saturday, and then I would drive back home. So pretty hard in a lot of ways to, essentially live in two cities, but it gave me, the abilities. We're pretty rooted here in Austin and love Austin. And so it just wasn't possible to make the move up north. But it was nice to have the level of coaching and that. So I've made it work. I would love to ride a little bit more, but the nice thing when I'm up there, I can focus on riding, and I've had the opportunity to ride multiple horses during the day. And so I can really kind of pack in as much as I can into those days. And then when I'm here, I can, focus on my office and my husband and my dogs and, and balance the two. So it's not been in a perfect situation, but I've been making it work.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
And you say office, what's your office?
I have a general dental office that I own and manage now, and was the sole practitioner for about 4 years before my diagnosis. So it's been really good. It's kind of the best of both worlds to still get to have a job and have something that keeps me just as busy as I want it to keep me, and to get to do something else too now that I find just amazingly fulfilling and rewarding in a lot of other ways too.
And how much are you traveling for competitions?
So the competitions, right now there's 4 international level competitions in the U.S. each year. And we're usually gone about a little under 2 weeks for each of those competitions. The horses travel on air ride semi-vans that are converted so that they have a nice box stall, a nice big area to travel in. So the horses will leave usually 4 or 5 days before competition so that they have time to rest and recuperate and be, back in their prime before we're competing. For this year, 2 of the competitions were 2 weeks apart in Florida. So I actually left December 28th with the horses to come to Florida, and I was down there with them until January 28th. It's amazing down there. I mean, there's just the quality of horses, the quality of riding, just the people that are down there. I mean, it literally is people from all over the world, and some of our top riders, people that are just walking by you, getting a cup of coffee, and that's someone that's won a medal in the Olympics. I mean, it's incredible, and I think that it has helped me kind of up my game as well to be in that environment and just watching and learning as much as I can from everyone down there too.
I bet, yeah. Do you like competing?
I do. I actually, if I'm not competing for a while, I start to miss it. So there's just something about kind of that. There's nothing that really replaces being in the show arena as far as kind of testing your training and getting your performance to the next level. I mean, you're getting feedback from international level judges, and you have 6.5 minutes to show what you've got. So it's hard. I mean, it can be the highest high or the lowest low if things don't go so well, but it's pretty incredible and just neat, as that kind of tester to see, okay, we've been working on these things. Can we put it together and make it count when it needs to count?
And Royal Dancer, does he like competing?
He does. He really does. I mean, he kind of lights up, and honestly, I think one of his favorite things is being in there, and it goes back to kind of being that ham in the spotlight. I think he
Right.
knows that everybody's watching him, and he loves it.
Yeah, and you're aiming for the 2020 ParaOlympics in Tokyo. So what are your next 2 years going to be like? What kind of prep are you doing?
So, the biggest thing are these competitions and just getting the feedback from the judges, and then in the interim, working with our coaches to really kind of increase both our strength and the horse's strength, and really iron out some of the small details that are what can get you to that next level. I mean, the goal is not only to be in Tokyo at the Paralympics, but also to be bringing home a medal for Team USA. So, we're really looking at what is that going to take to get us up on the medal podium and have those types of performances. So it's the little details that can count to get that score. So for me, it will probably be working with, I love learning from different people. So probably continuing to work with a group of coaches and getting feedback from them as well. I have actually been talking with one of our high performance consultant for the U.S., Michelle Asseline, that we may actually look for a second horse for me as well. So I'm kind of putting that out to the universe, and that'll be some kind of exciting things in the next couple of weeks that I'm going to be posting to see. We really want to get a medal caliber horse out there, and I think that Royal Dancer is an amazing partner, and I believe that he could be it. But I think it could also be awesome to have another horse to compete with as well.
I would expect it would be nice to have somebody in the wings regardless.
It is, yeah. I mean, you learn something from every horse that you're on. You really do. And so I think for me as a rider, the more experience I can have, and having two horses gives me even more experience in the show ring as
Right.
well. It's anything we can do to up our game and make ourselves more prepared. This year, we're qualifying for the World Equestrian Games, which are going to be held actually for only the second time in the U.S. They're in North Carolina at Tryon. From there in 2019, I think as far as preparing, potentially going abroad, I think will be a huge asset just from an experience level, getting the horses in some new environments, really competing against a lot of our other para-equestrian teams from the European countries that really are at the top of their game and are the ones that are getting the gold medals, and so learn from them as well, hopefully in that year in between.
And I know that you're involved in the Austin Amputee Support Group and the Para Equestrian Association Mentor Program and the Austin Sarcoma Support Group. So you're very involved in this new life.
I am. I am. I've thought from the beginning, there's really kind of a bigger purpose to why this happened and why I'm going through it. And, I don't know exactly what that means still, but, I've definitely found a lot of even just good for myself and giving back and sharing my story and hopefully helping others through my experience, even if it's just to have a little bit better day or to put something that they're going through in their life into perspective and say, you know what, this isn't that big a deal. Let's just, let's push forward. It will be fine. So another woman here in Austin who's also a sarcoma survivor and I started the Austin Sarcoma Support Group and got it kind of off the ground last summer. And so that's been really rewarding because when she and I went through it, there really wasn't anything in the area. We had a great team of doctors and support on that side of things, but they're busy. They have a lot of patients. It's not their job to kind of have that other part of the community. And so, there was a gentleman who I did get to connect with, and he actually came walking into my hospital room, I think maybe just a day after my surgery, and he was up on a prosthesis and walking in, and I was like, gosh, if Jeremy can do this, I can do this too. And so I know that could be a huge help as you're going through things, to just know other people, or even just have someone ask a question about, like, hey, I'm doing this or that. Is that normal? So that's been really rewarding. I've gotten involved too with the company that manufactures my microprocessor knee, called Autobach. In an awesome turn of events, they moved their headquarters to Austin a few years back. So they're right down the road, and just an incredible group of people. And so it's been really fun to get to work with them. I've gotten the opportunity to test drive a few of the up and coming technology as far as knees, and a microprocessor ankle that works with my knee to have a even more dynamic movement pattern that's a lot more similar to a normal walking gait. So it's been fun, and connecting with other amputees, and hopefully helping them if I can, and they're there for me as well, has been pretty cool.
It seems like your whole sort of outlook on life has changed, and with the amputation and riding, and I don't know, it just seems very different from before. Am I reading that correctly?
I think you're spot on. I think that I had some blinders on, and I was very kind of task oriented and driven, and I had I had a wonderful life, and I was very blessed. But I think this forced me to take those blinders off and absorb everything, and really stop and appreciate the small things a little bit more, and take the time to really appreciate all of those things, instead of, okay, this mission's been accomplished. What's the next thing? What's the next thing we've got to do? And so it has given me just a little bit better perspective on what's important, and what I want to do, and giving myself permission to do it as well. That's been a hard thing with, I wasn't maybe the happiest person in private practice. And as much as I loved my patients, and I loved the science and helping people, the realities of private practice, it's really hard. It's a difficult life, and giving my all every day didn't leave a whole lot of me to give to the rest of my life. And looking back on it, it was, I wouldn't change a thing, but I think that this is such a better balance for me.
It's great to find what you're there for, or something. Hard to explain.
Yeah, no, it is. It's one of those of, like, there was, like I said, I was very blessed, but in this new path, I feel like there's just, I'm giving more and receiving more in return, mm-hmm. I guess, and just, experiencing every part of life.
Well, we're wrapping up, but I first want to ask you some questions about food. Like, what's your favorite breakfast or your favorite snack?
Oh, gosh. So breakfast for me right now is usually, I found this amazing, it's a paleo granola. It's organic, that you can find at Whole Foods. And so it has just a little bit of sweetness to it. So I usually use that with a plain, like a cashew based or some based yogurt, with some fresh organic berries on it. And I found that gets me going in the morning and keeps me going. And as a snack, I love fruit. So it's usually going to be apples with peanut butter or celery with peanut butter. Just something to, satisfy that sweet tooth that just doesn't seem to go away, but not give in to the things that really I shouldn't be eating too.
Right. It sounds like nutrition and food is important to you.
It really, that's been something I was on that road to kind of discovering food and the importance of it before all of this. But, in learning more about the connections of some of the, pesticides in relation to cancer and just, the food that we eat is our fuel. And so, the cleaner that we can eat and things that give us energy are so much better. And I can tell, I mean, if I cheat and we're going out to eat and I eat a bunch of stuff that tastes really great, but the next day I'll feel it. I mean, I just feel like I'm driving with the parking brake on for the rest of the day. So it's been kind of a path for me to find that, even eating organic and the more that I can eat, that my body's not having to try and filter out excess chemicals and that, like I can notice a difference even there. So tough to do, especially on the road, but I found kind of some staples and things that I can travel with that my body does good on and gives me energy without, too much sugar or other bad stuff.
Do you eat meat?
I do eat meat. Yes. Mm-hmm. I try to source it again as best I can. I try and always just do wild caught fish. And then it's mainly fish and a little bit of like a grass-fed organic beef. I don't do a lot of chicken and pork. I'll eat it every once in a while, but for whatever reason, I feel like my tummy just doesn't love it as much. Mm-hmm. So those are usually my two kind of sources of meat.
And it sounds like you don't eat dairy.
I try not to. No, I can get away with, and I love cheese. So I reserve my dairy for my Gouda and my hard cheddars and those with a glass of wine every once in a while are quite nice. But I don't drink milk. I've gotten where I really like the organic almond milks and some of the like cashew yogurts and some of those. So I don't do a lot of dairy.
Well, Katie, this has been totally an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad that I came up to you at the restaurant, I'll say.
Well, thank you. I know this is just wonderful. And again, a highlight for me as well. And I love when things like this can work out, that it's just a coincidence and coming together. And I really appreciate the time and interest in my story as well.
Oh, absolutely. It was really a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please tell your pals about it. No, really, I mean right now. Send an email to one friend just to say these women are awesome. And also remember to sign up for the newsletter and get the link to a Spotify playlist of favorite workout songs of some of my guests. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Bye-bye.
Oh gosh, my Roomba just started up. Do you want me to go turn it off real fast?